Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time it's a First Doctor story, The Space Museum. It's a classic series review, so that means we have a television companion plot synopsis. Here is that plot synopsis for The Space Museum. The TARDIS jumps a time track and the travellers arrive on the planet Zeros. There, they discover their own future selves displayed as exhibits in a museum established as a monument to the galactic conquest of the warlike Morok invaders who now rule the planet. When time shifts back to normal, they realise that they must do everything they can to try to avert this potential future. Vicky helps the native Zerons to obtain arms and thereby revolt against the Moroks. The revolution succeeds and the travellers go on their way, confident that the future has been changed. So, the William Hartnell story from the second season of Doctor Who, and it is part of the latest Blu-ray. I didn't see that version for this, I've still to see the full quality version, but it is only the second time I've actually ever watched this story, so my memories and my thoughts and feelings about this story come through in that respect. What did I think of it? Well, let's go into that and just have a bit of a discussion about that overall. I actually think it's not a bad little concept. It's sandwiched between two better known stories, The Crusade and The Chase. It doesn't detract from that. I think it's a nice little story in its own, and the concept of them jumping a time track and seeing their future is interesting. First episode, it then becomes a basic let's get out of here run around as they try and avert their own future that they've seen in the last 3 episodes. I don't think it's a bad concept overall, though I think there may be some limitations on the budget and also limitations on the casting as well, because William Hartnell was on holiday for episode 3. However, with the characterizations and the characters we have here, it's not a bad little ensemble overall, and it continues some traits that you see in the previous story of the Crusade as well with some of the characters, which is really nice to see. Speaking of the characters, we have of course the main cast. We have of course the Doctor, played by William Hartnell. I would say this is mischievous, impish First Doctor that we're really in the comfortable minds of seeing at the moment. We've had a lot of that at the Crusade as well, when he's rummaging through that bazaar, that market stall, rummaging for clothing. Here, here's a couple of times he's making mischief. When he's been interrogated on the telepathic monitor, when he apparently gets knocked out by the Zerons when they first kidnap him or take him hostage, and he plays unconscious on it, and there's the fun there. The fact that the Zerons try to find him and he hides in the Dalek, the famous scene that everybody's probably seen, where he hides in the Dalek exhibit. It's a very playful First Doctor for some of this, but it also has all the seriousness aspects of the Doctor that we come to know. He really is bristling with the injustice of being kept prisoner and effectively cryogenically frozen for this exhibit which happens. It's a great little role. It's very well played. Hartnell does have a couple of fluffs. The fluorescence in these walls comes from this episode. But it's an interesting characterization. He definitely does come across as the First Doctor that everybody is aware of. No, he's not too gruff. He's not too comical. He's right in the aspect of the way the role was perceived with the other incarnations that do the Doctor, the other actors who play the First Doctor in the future. So it certainly is typical, stereotypical First Doctor, and I'm there all for it. I really am. We then have, as has always been the case with any review I've done on the first 2 seasons of Doctor Who, the 2 characters that seem to put it all together. Although this time round I have a funny feeling the scripting's maybe not working as well with the 2 of them, and they do split up for most of the time as well. We've got Ian, played by William Russell, of course, who is very much the action man, very much wanting to get out the situation, very much throwing ideas at the Doctor and getting frustrated with the Doctor, saying that won't work, my boy, and this won't work, my boy, and that won't work. Because there's a lot of interplay between the 4 characters here of trying to get out their sticky situation they have here. And William Russell and Ian, you can tell he's the stalwart lead effectively now, after William Hartnell, and he really does take a lead with everybody in this story, and it's really nice to see. You then have Barbara, played of course by Jacqueline Hill. I love the relationship between Ian and Barbara. There is that deep respect, and they have that deep respect for the Doctor as well, and you can see that in this story too. But there's also the factor of the fact that Barbara is still, and this is one of the unique things about some of the early female companions. They're very, very gung-ho. They want to try and sort themselves in situations. She's a bit perilous and Pauline at the time when she gets chased by the Monarch's guards, but the way Barbara assesses the situation, gets help from the Zerons later on, and is very much pushing through the gas that's in the museum at one point, is very Barbara in its characterization, very much what you would expect of Barbara, if I'm absolutely honest. And it's a very, very nice characterization. It's well within character. I love the way Barbara is played, and I love the way it all bounces off each other with her and Ian, and it's certainly worth watching just for that. We then have Vicky, played by Maureen O'Brien. I would say that Vicky's character, I have a funny feeling that potentially some of the stuff that Vicky was doing with the Rebels and the Zerons was actually going to be the Doctor's part, with them getting all the weapons from the Monarch's armoury stores and all that to cause a revolution. I get the impression that was supposed to be William Hartnell's part, but when he decided to take a holiday for episode 3, they gave all the lines to Vicky. And it's good to see that kind of initiative coming from Vicky, that she wants to try and change it, and she's the one that's really wanted to change the whole outcome and make it work, so they don't get stuck in the case, and she's the one that's doing all the ideas, and it's really well played by Maureen O'Brien, and actually gives a lot for her to do, which is lovely to see. And you see that, and later you see that Vicky's got a very strong, headstrong character for her, because you see that in the Time Meddler as well. So this is kind of like this is just carrying on the character that they've created in the rescue and developing it more. I think there is, as I say, I think there's an element of she's been given lines that were designed for another character, but all the better for it. It's played in such a way that works, and because she's the young person of the crew, she works well with the young Zerons who are there. Speaking of the Zerons and Morlocks that we have in this story, we have Sita, played by Peter Sanders. He is the one that goes along with Barbara to try and get out of the museum when they try and escape, and it's a nice little role, and he's not quite the leader, but he is one of the main protagonists for the Zeron rebels, and it's an interesting little role he plays here. It's actually quite nice. We've then got Peter Craze playing Daco, who is the leader. I think that's quite. Peter Craze has made another appearance in Doctor Who. He made an appearance in Censor Rights the year before, so this is his second appearance, which is really nice, and it's nice to see that. And yeah, he does play the kind of headstrong role, the kind of leader role to an extent, and it's quite nice to see. I quite like the way it's played. We then have Tor, played by Jeremy Bulloch. Now, Jeremy Bulloch is better known as playing Boba Fett in the Star Wars movies, but he makes one more appearance in The Time Warrior in season 11, and he's the main guest character in that story. But he plays a very small role here with Tor. It's quite fun to see, but there's not too much to it. It's played well enough. So you got Lobos, played by Richard Shaw. He is the kind of corporal. He's the general. He's the main leader of the museum and the occupational force on Zeros of the Morlocks. He's quite a standard general figure. He wants to keep the status quo. He has no qualms about freezing people and putting them in as museum pieces if they're unauthorised visitors. He doesn't like the status quo being rocked, but he's supposed to be the big enemy of this, and he's kind of slightly ineffectual, and his comeuppance is rather easily contrived, I think is probably the best way of putting it. It is rather easily contrived, and it's a bit of a shame, because it kind of detracts from the character just a little. And then you've got Ivor Salter, who plays the Morlock commander, who's supposed to be the second command, and they do make him out to be the one who wants to be the one in power and wants to overthrow Lobos, but they do nothing with it. It doesn't work, as far as I'm concerned. The only bit that he has power for is when he comes in and stops the Doctor and Ian overpowering Lobos with their intelligence, when the Doctor's unfrozen in episode 4. But apart from that, it's slightly ineffectual, and that's the thing with most of the characters in here. They're kind of like pieces in a story, in a narrative, they don't have much to them. They're not really that interesting, and it's really the main four, plus one or two of the Zerons that really make the story in that respect. And it's a little sad because it does make it not as great as it could have been. And now some of the plot elements of the story I thought quite interesting and sometimes quite good as well. The idea of the time track and slipping the time track and the TARDIS having a kind of hiccup basically, and they end up in their own future, and they're treading through things without any footprints, and they're not being heard when they're talking, and they're getting a silent, and they're observing things. It's a really interesting concept. And then it goes back to the kind of normal runaround. Let's try and get out of the situation that you have in these stories. The initial premise doesn't get its just desserts through the rest of the story. It seems to be a little bit lacking at times. I like the idea that there is concern around the TARDIS crew, and they're trying to talk the way out of the predicament. There's a lot of conversation between them saying, oh, we could do this, no, we can't do that, that's going to cause this. What about this? No, we can't do that, this is going to cause this. And it just causes a bit of annoyance between the four of them, just kind of frisson. When they start splitting up, the Doctor getting split up and taken away by the Zerons, and then obviously getting put away and cryogenically frozen, and then the rest of them kind of split up from there. Vicky ends up with the rebels, Barbara ends up working with one of the rebels who finds her separately, and then you've got Ian trying to get to the Doctor to save him and get him out of his predicament of being frozen. So it's very interesting how all the four of them have slightly different stories, and it does work. Another bits I like is the false images and the whole idea of the Doctor fooling Lobos when he's been interrogated in the second episode, and some of the images he gives. It's really quite interesting, and how the Doctor has realised rather quickly what Lobos is trying to do and overpowers it, really. The whole fun and mischievousness of the first Doctor in the second episode is really fun as well. The Dalek incident, the fact that he plays like he's fainted when the Zerons first capture him, and I say capture him. The whole thing is really quite nicely done, and I do quite like that. One interesting thing I did notice was the Doctor was frozen, and he doesn't like being frozen that cold, and he just mentioned some old ailments, like he's got rheumatism, which I thought was an interesting concept to put forward, that the Doctor may have rheumatism and may have some sort of ailment there. Obviously, in this point, we don't know the Doctor could regenerate and repair his body like that, but at the time, it's an interesting concept having that kind of have that thought, and the Doctor is old in other ways, and they play on that a little bit, which is really quite nice. But at the end of the day, this story is about an oppressor being repressed, and revolt happening with the oppressed, taking back their planet, and that's basically the whole story. It's not anything special. It's written pretty solidly by Glyn Jones and directed pretty solidly by Mervyn Pinfield. There really isn't much to say. It's an enjoyable romp. It works well. It's fun to watch. I wouldn't say it's take your brain out, but it certainly isn't one that I would despair at watching or have to not think about. You know, there is a bit of intrigue there about the plot and how they get out of this predicament they found out in the first episode, and it's a nice way of writing for it. But overall, I think I'm just going to squeak this through as a 3.5 TARDIS out of 5 story. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the stories from the William Hartnell era, and also how the story stacks up with the rest of the stories I've reviewed for the TV series so far. So the Space Museum fits in with the Aztecs, the War Machines, the Celestial Toymaker, the Crusaders at bottom with 3 TARDISes out of 5, and at the top there's still 2 stories with 4 TARDISes out of 5. They are of course An Unearthly Child and The Time Meddler. Overall, there are still 2 stories at the bottom with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are Time Lash and Sleep No More. And at the top, there are 6 stories with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Case of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That was quite intriguing seeing those review stats there, because the last time I did a 4.5 TARDIS out of 5 story for the TV series was 4 years ago. It was about 60 reviews ago, 60 TV reviews ago, so it's a long time now. So there's another one due very soon, I'm sure. And there are a few more stories out there that are 4.5 and maybe even a 5 There is one out there, I think, there is definitely a 5, but you've still to find out what that is, and it's still coming up very, very soon. But overall, with the Space Museum, what did you think about it? Leave a comment down below. Did you like it? Leave a comment down below. Did you not like it? Leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please like it, share it with the hashtag teamstructor, and hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out if you like the channel as a whole. General rule, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT, which is when I'm next back with George Orwell's 6 Facts. And yes, if you want to help support the channel, you can go to the Facebook, you can go to the Instagram, you can go to the Twitter, you can go to the community tab on YouTube, and you can also go to Patreon at patreon.com/deanstructor. For as little as $1 and £1 a month, you can help support the channel. Keep an eye out, the Patreon page is going to be tweaked a little bit over the next month or so due to some changes that Patreon are doing. So yeah, there might be a few different perks and tiers that are coming up very, very soon. So keep an eye out on that. Patreon.com/deanstructor. That's it from me. Thanks guys for watching as always. And do you know what? I will see you Sunday with George Orwell's 6 Facts. I can't even say that. George Orwell's 6 Facts. And until then guys, thanks so much for watching. And do you know what? I will see you later.